This is the Trent Show. It's Friday, day 5 of the fake strike. Remember, nobody is on strike. School administrators, school boards have chosen to close schools, which really creates a lot of leverage on teachers to show up down here at the Capitol. And of course, they've been given this great message by the OEA. I think this is it is a genius work. I've described it as a master class in political communications. Oklahoma Education Association, I think really probably coming from the National Education Association. We know that the OEA has been strapped for cash over the last decade or so as their membership has declined. But somebody has just done a masterwork in political communication. It was all teacher pay for weeks, months, years, and now all of a sudden teacher pay doesn't matter. All of a sudden it's about something else. Textbooks. Textbooks are too old. You got these schools where every student has a MacBook, but I guess the textbooks are falling apart. So somehow we've got to raise taxes to pay for students who have MacBooks to have better textbooks and the desks and class size and all these things. I've already said one of the things that the legislature should have done and could still do is just free up the money, turn the salary schedule into a recommended salary schedule, and let local school districts make these decisions. If people are unhappy, if teachers are unhappy that they got such a big raise, or, legitimately, we had one teacher tell us on Monday, she said, look, I would rather forego the raise and have some of that money go to hiring more teachers. If that's what they want, those decisions need to be made at the local level. They can't be made here at the state capitol, but we're here at the state capitol. We're going to go talk to folks. It's day 5 of this fake strike. We're going to find out what's on people's minds and what might get them back to work. And also, we're going to take a look at some of these signs. Somebody pointed out to me, a lot of the signs directed at politicians, if you put it up in a schoolroom directed at a teacher, at a principal, or another student, you might be suspended or even expelled for bullying or threats. We're going to take a look at some of the signs that we can find up here as well. Thanks for watching the Trent Show this Friday. Let's go walk around. Okay, so tell me your name and where you teach.
My name is Fred Oresco. I'm a middle school math teacher at Kellyville, Oklahoma.
Okay, very good. This is the 5th day that I assume your schools are closed. What brings you down here?
Funding for our classrooms. It's not about the pay anymore. We got a good pay raise. It's about funding for state workers. It's about funding for our custodians, our support staff. The raise they give them is a joke. It's also about not having enough teachers. There used to be 100 staff at my school. Now there's 76. I am the epitome of what this is about because I'm retired. They called me back because they had a teacher walk out in mid-year. I came back to teach until December, and then they could hire somebody at mid-year, but all the mid-year graduates are leaving the state. So I'm staying because the kids couldn't, I'm invested in those children. And you couldn't have a third teacher in 1 year. So I stayed for this year, but at the end of the year I'm gone also because I'm retired.
So, a lot of parents, though, we've been hearing this more as the week goes on, they're frustrated. The schools are closed. Teachers got, as you said, a very generous raise. Some people are asking, should some of that money, instead of being a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 pay raise for teachers, should some of that money have gone to textbooks, have gone to just hiring more teachers at a slightly lower wage rate, which would still make us very competitive regionally?
Well, they're still looking at putting $800 million into prisons. So in answer to that, no, because you figure there's been 3 raises in 27 years. 3 raises in 27 years.
Isn't it true, though, that the state, at least the state minimum salary schedule, gives a teacher a raise every single year? It's not a big raise, but every single year you get a raise.
$300. Okay, $300, that's $50 a month, which is, $12.50 a week, which comes out to how much a day? $1 a day? What's inflation?
Most of the time, it's probably more than that.
Health insurance goes up almost every year. The years that 3 years ago, 2007, 2008, when we got our raises, those raises were almost completely eaten by health insurance increases.
So, on the other hand, though, right, you have other state agencies saying they need money too. You mentioned prisons. I don't think the legislatures, the State Department of Corrections is asking for $800, even more million increase. The legislature's not going to do that, though. I don't think anybody suspects that, right? We live in a world of finite resources. Wouldn't it be reasonable for parents to say, look, we're putting almost a $500 million increase. No state agency has ever got that big of an increase in 1 year. Let's see what that does.
It's not $500 million increase. It's not $500 million. I don't know where that number came from.
It's over $400 million, and they're likely to pass some of these things here today, which is going to put it very close to or over $500 million.
Funded it completely. What I saw was about $200 million in funding. You're talking about, I know it's a $200 million increase at least for pay, but you're also looking at what did they cut? They cut 28% over the last 8 years. We're second in the nation in cuts or first in cuts to education.
But that's only state aid. When you actually look at overall spending on our schools in Oklahoma, there hasn't been nearly that much of a cut. That reduction in state aid has been made up for in other funding, local funding.
Local funding, tell me where. And that's disparate because communities like Pryor, which have the Mid-America Park, they got great funding. They're not here because they're open. They have great funding because of ad valorem taxes. But ad valorem taxes mean places like Kellyville, where I teach, they don't get that money. Ad valorem taxes mean that places like OK or Cash or Freedom, small towns, they don't get that money. Towns that have those facilities, they get that money. But that's an inequality, it's inequitable.
But that is the only reason a starting teacher in Texas can make any more money than a starting teacher in Oklahoma is only because they have exactly the system that you're saying we shouldn't have.
Well, I look at Texas, and if I were to go to Texas right now as a starting teacher, Dallas ISD makes $51K. Oklahoma, without this raise, makes $31. With this raise, you'll make $37. You're still $14,000 behind Dallas ISD.
But you're comparing statewide numbers for Oklahoma to just Dallas.
Okay. It doesn't. Where in Oklahoma do you start as a teacher more than $31,000?
Did you know that the starting salary in Texas, the state minimum starting salary in Texas, is lower than it is in Oklahoma? Did you know that?
But how many districts actually do that?
Well, that's the point, right? They have state property. They have local property taxes that make up that difference, especially in places like Dallas, where the cost of living is high.
They also don't have an income tax.
That is amen to that. Okay, so tell me your name and where do you teach?
My name is Mary Stevens. I teach in Dewar, America.
Okay, and what grade?
Henrietta. I teach 3rd grade and 4th grade.
Okay, and so last week and this week, I guess the governor signed the big pay raise. Why? Schools have been closed now for 5 days. Why is that?
We haven't asked for a raise. We want a raise, but we want our classrooms funded. The raise is great. It would have been better, we think, if it may have come a little later, but we need help in our classrooms.
So, I mean, I think a lot of Oklahomans, I talked to a lot of folks who are very confused about all this because they feel like teacher pay. We had state question 779. We've had all of this. Education just got the biggest increase. I think it may be the biggest increase in history for a single agency because of the teacher pay raise. And now somehow that's not enough.
Well, it's confusing because, first of all, it's not funded. We're not sure it's going to be fully funded. We may go back to our classrooms and we may have a raise that our district will be responsible for taking care of, which will close little schools like mine down. So we don't trust is one thing. And another thing, we need money for our classrooms. Our schools need money. We have buildings that need repairs. We have yucky textbooks that are 20 years old. We have to watch our temperatures in our classrooms. We have to shut our heat off when we leave for the weekends when it's cold outside. Things like that. And not that we shouldn't be conservative. It's just that a lot has changed since I started teaching. And one is that they keep cutting us every year. It's not a catch-up. They're not caught up.
I mean, you mentioned buildings. I mean, building funds, a lot of that is local money, right, that the school districts decide about. I mean, do you think that by making all the focus on the state capitol, that has maybe relieved some of the pressure on school administrators and school boards to better address some of those local needs?
I think that I come to school every year, and our first thing they tell us is, well, we've been cut this much more, or we're going to have to let this person go, or this one is retiring, but we're not going to replace her. We're going to pick up the slack, those kind of things. And I think that we have to neglect things that we really want to take care of because of funding issues. I know there's different kinds of money, and there's a building fund and things like that, and we stretch it as far as we can. And then we have bake sales, and we have little kid ball games, and we write grants for paint so we can paint our school and things like that. Things that we expect everyone else to come up with when the money is here.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much. So are you a teacher?
I am a teacher at Pond Creek Hunter.
Your sign says fully funded education is music to your ears. What can you define what is fully funded?
Well, these schools that they don't have updated textbooks and they are having broken chairs and desks that they have to survive with, I'm thinking they need that equipment. At my school, I'm lucky. We don't have those problems. And so, but yeah, the kids need more. It's not about the teachers anymore. It's about the kids now.
So how does that work? You mentioned your school is okay. I know we've seen over the last few years in Oklahoma, Norman has deployed a computer for every kid, Catoosa a MacBook for every student, and then we hear that other districts, can't afford textbooks. I mean, how do you explain that? Because if the focus is on the state, but some school districts are doing great, and even maybe some people would view that as profligate spending, and other school districts are strapped, how can it be the state's fault?
Well, because at my school, we are not funded by the state anymore. We have a wind farm, and we have a lot of tax dollars that pay for all of our wonderful buildings that we have, new buildings. About everything at our school is new, and we have computers. Each kid has a laptop, 5th through 12th grade at our school. But that's why we have money, is because of the wind farm. Some of these rural schools that have wind farms or oil money, they're the ones that are doing okay. But I think the big schools like Tulsa and Oklahoma City are the ones that are hurting the worst.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so tell us who you are and where do you teach?
Kim White, Ponca City High School in Ponca City, Oklahoma.
Okay, so your sign caught my eye because you say we march for students, funding, textbook supplies, raises down there really little at the bottom. Raises had been the big issue in Oklahoma for years, teacher raises. Why has that sort of gone away? Everything's flipped around and people are hearing a really different message now.
Well, I was here in 90, so I did the march in 90, and the fact is, I think when you talk to most of our teachers, the priority's always been about the funding in the classroom, and the raises are down the list, and that's why my poster looks the way it does. So,
most classroom funding, though, is teacher pay, right? I mean, it's actually the teachers is where most of that quote-unquote classroom money goes. I think Oklahoma's like that, right? Oklahoma's really value teachers.
well, I think you're probably right about that, but there's so many things that we're lacking in our classrooms, and in Ponca, we're a lot better off than a lot of the other smaller schools, and so, we're here for everybody.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so tell us who you are and where do you teach?
My name is Brian Campos, and I teach at Key Elementary in Tulsa Public Schools.
Excellent, Tulsa. So your sign, not sure if legislators hate kids or just terrible at their jobs. What do you mean by that?
I mean, they're not doing anything to support the teachers and the students of this state, and it seems like it's either they either hate them or they are just don't care and are terrible at their jobs. They need to do something about it.
So last week, the legislature passed the largest funding increase for any agency in recent memory when they passed the $400+ billion package. Most of that going to teachers. How does that play into this?
Well, the teacher raise is great, and I'm all for the teacher raise, but they have already started taking away some of that funding. $50 million of that funding has already been taken away, and they are not funding for any of our years that we have said and outlined for year 2 or 3, and have done nothing for the students. We're $150 million short of what we asked for our students, and that's not okay.
Well, I mean, just a couple months ago, the OEA was asking for a $10,000 raise over 10 years. So that would be $1,000 a year. I mean, the legislature has outdone that by times 6, right? So that's a huge raise teachers get this year.
It was a $10,000 raise over 3.
Oh, that was the
first and second.
That was the more recent. Before that, the OEA was asking for $10,000 over 10 years. Before they came out with a $10,000 over 3 years. So, I mean, people could look at that and say, I mean, look, the legislature has done basically in year 1 what the OEA asked for, and it's more than the OEA was asking for just a couple months ago. How can that possibly not be good enough?
Well, it's not good enough because they're trying to make up for decades of neglect for teachers and neglect of our students.
But isn't that moving the goalpost if the OEA was asking for $10,000 over 10 years just a couple months ago?
I mean, it may be, but it has to be done. I mean, nothing's going to happen if we don't.
One last question about legislators. A lot of state legislators have, I mean, Oklahoma's a conservative state. A lot of people in Oklahoma support low taxes. They think that's good policy, and that's a lot of these legislators got elected on that mandate. They promised people that they would support that. Shouldn't they be true to their word?
Should they be true to their word? I mean, not necessarily. Not when their word has been damaging our education system in Oklahoma.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Well, there you go. It's not about the teacher pay. Nobody cares about teacher pay. Who was talking? Was anybody even talking about teacher pay? Has anybody in Oklahoma for years been talking about teacher pay? I mean, can you believe? I've said it before. I'll say it again. An absolutely amazing turnaround in the messaging coming from the Oklahoma Education Association, which actually from where we're shooting right now is just, I can see it from here just off to my right. Oklahoma Education Association, just less than half a mile from the state capitol here. And they have done an amazing job to pretend like teacher pay is an irrelevancy and to pretend like teacher pay is not money that goes to the classroom. Maybe it's not even money spent on education at all. It's all about all of these other things. This is absolutely wild, and it's a great lesson to everybody involved in politics. You can't, including our state legislators, You cannot take groups like the Oklahoma Education Association at their word. You have to understand their intent, and you have to understand their interests. Their interest is in having a fight. That is the interest of the OEA. It's the interest of the NEA. They need to have fights like this, and so you can't appease your way to a compromise necessarily with them. You actually have to achieve some kind of, if not political victory, not just a policy compromise, but some kind of political détente. And obviously, we have not seen the legislature accomplish that yet. They are, right now, as we speak, debating in the state Senate additional tax increases that would potentially go to education to make up for the small piece of the tax increase package that they took out. That was the hotel motel tax. That was a small piece of that package. They're looking at that. And, of course, nobody here wants to talk about the fact that the Oklahoma State Department of Health, the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority have put the state underwater going into the next budget. If not for those two agencies and their irresponsibility, possible even criminal activity, as we have state and federal investigations of the health department still ongoing, if not for those agencies' irresponsibility, the legislature would have all of the money, plenty of money, to make up for the hotel motel tax. They would have, by my back-of-the-envelope calculation, about the same amount of money as they're debating in the state Senate right now, extracting additionally from taxpayers, because state agencies have not been responsible with the funds that they already had, and because politicians have not aggressively held them accountable. It's not until there's a smoking gun that we actually get serious legislative oversight of state legislative agencies. And look, I know a lot of state legislators are awake to that. They're focused on that now. Good for them. We need to support them in that. And finally, Here's my message as we wrap up the Trent England Show for the day, for the week, and that is we need to tell school administrators to reopen schools, because it is the school administrators and the school boards. They're the ones who've closed schools. Nobody's on strike. School districts have made the decision to close schools. They've told teachers that you either have to lose vacation days, or you have to go to the state capitol, or you have to go sit in an empty classroom. So if you're asking yourself, why are there so many people up at the state capitol, even on day 5 of the fake strike, that is a big part of the reason why. Obviously, some people are coming up here, signing in, doing whatever they have to do to not lose a vacation day, and then they're leaving. Even as we were walking up here this morning, we saw plenty of people leaving at the beginning of the rally, right? Because they had just come, they signed in quickly, and then they're taking off. We've seen that every day that we've been up here. So, look, if you want this to end, it's going to take a lot of pressure on school district administrators to reopen the schools. And if your school district is closed, you should be getting that message to your school district leadership. And if your school district is open, you need to be letting people know about that on social media, because a lot of people think, a lot of the media has been reporting that the whole state is shut down. It's a statewide strike. Of course, that's not true. The majority of Oklahoma school districts are actually open. Of course, most of those are small school districts, but the majority of Oklahoma school districts are actually open. They're operating. We need to add to that list. I'm Trent England. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can watch the show on YouTube, Facebook. You can comment both of those places, but comment on Facebook. I love to get your feedback there. That's the easiest place for me to find it. You can also subscribe on iTunes, and you can find us on SoundCloud. You can find the whole archive of the show at ocpathink.org. That's the website of the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. There's also a data tool. You can research data on education there using the data tool at ocpathink.org. I hope you'll do that. Thanks for watching the Trent England Show. We'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be back up here. Maybe we'll be back in the studio. You'll find out if you tune in.